The mainstream media, the gift that keeps on giving. I was talking to my contractor the other day. I'm looking to build a new studio in my backyard. My contractor, he came over to check out the situation and to give me an estimate on about how much it's going to cost me to do it. While he was doing that, we got to talking about the channel, and he asked me, do you ever worry about running out of topics, running out of ideas, running out of things to talk about? I told him running out of topics will never be a problem for this channel. Have you seen the American media? It is impossible for me to run out of ideas for content because there is so much propaganda every day in the media. I had no intention of making another video this afternoon. I was going to spend the rest of the day catching up work on the book. I was grading plays from this week. I opened a new tab on my browser. I needed to check the scores in Major League Baseball from this past Thursday night. I opened my tab. The first thing I notice is an article from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. The headline read, "The historical naivety of white people." The historical naivety of white people. I couldn't help myself. I had to read it. I had to check it out. The article was written by someone named Paul Krause. Well, KC, who the fuck is Paul Krause? Wish I could tell you. I've never heard of him or her or they. Not sure which proper pronouns I should use here. With the name Paul, I would assume this particular birthing person has male genitals. But in 2022, you just never know. It's rare for me to not be able to find any kind of background information on someone. I spent about 15 minutes researching Paul Krause. Okay, not really. I didn't care that much. I spent about 5 minutes researching they. I couldn't even find a fucking picture. According to the brief biography at the bottom of the article, Paul Krause is a former journalist and a retired professor. He taught courses at Woke U pertaining to white privilege. He also wrote the curriculum for the proper practice of butt bongo for men who want to get pregnant. His most recent trash piece was explaining the perceived naivety of white people. I don't feel like I'm naive. According to Paul Krause, being naive is something that white people are born with because we deflect responsibility. It allows for new crimes against black people to be committed. The entire premise of this piece of shit is that white people are responsible for the deaths of black Americans. Everything is our fault. This notion should actually sound familiar. It is the same narrative that Reid regurgitates on a nightly basis on MSNBC. It's the same bullshit Keith Olbermann attempts to promote on Twitter, but fails to gain any traction because no one's paying attention to America's oldest virgin. Paul Krause mentions what he calls the execution of Patrick Lyoya at the hands of the police. Back in April, a police officer in Michigan pulled Patrick over for a minor traffic violation. All right. So when you get pulled over for a minor traffic stop, what do? You sit your ass in your vehicle, hand over your license and your insurance, your registration. You take the ticket or the warning in some cases, and you move the fuck on. It's a simple process. It happens to millions of Americans every day. Somehow, none of them end up dead. Patrick chose option B. Once pulled over, he immediately stepped out of his car. The officer asked him to get back in the vehicle. Dude ends up running away. Cop tried twice to stop him with a taser. Didn't work. The chase ensued. Patrick ends up being shot and killed by this particular cop. Now, I don't know enough about this case to tell you whether deadly force was necessary or if it wasn't. I don't know. The officer is actually being charged with second-degree murder. To be honest, for the purpose of this video right here, it doesn't matter. What I do know, had Patrick simply remained in his vehicle and cooperated with the police, he would be alive today. That message right there, that does not get shared enough. Anytime something like this happens, the first thing the mainstream media does, they look for ways to blame the police. That cop was racist. He woke up that morning looking to kill a black man. I don't know why this is such a difficult concept to understand. If you want to live, don't run from the police. Seems pretty simple to me. Paul the birthing person continued by using the shooting in Buffalo as an example of white people being the biggest threat to black people. All right, look. The shooting in Buffalo, I believe it was back in May. That shooting was tragic. It was bullshit. But for every mass shooting where the majority of the victims are black, I can give you 5, 10 where the majority of the victims are white. Mass shootings happen for a variety of reasons. Every circumstance is different. Some are racially motivated. Some are motivated by religion or sexuality. Some are political. Sometimes you just have a deranged motherfucker having a bad day. But just because there is a mass shooting involving black victims doesn't mean white people are naive. I am sick of this media-driven bullshit that white people are the biggest threat to black people. I told you guys before, one of the biggest threats, one of the bigger threats to black men are black women. Most of these advocates, they're doing more harm than good. Joy Reid doesn't give a shit about black men. Joy Reid's trying to make money. Al Sharpton, he only cares about black men when he can capitalize financially. Black men in America are some of the biggest victims of exploitation. Paul Krause, he compares the supposed plight of African Americans to the Russians invading Ukraine. He says, "We are quick to call the Russian invasion of Ukraine genocide. When will white Americans realize their liquidation of millions of people of color as worthy of monetary commitment to make things right?" The liquidation of millions of people of color? What he's basically saying is that there's a genocide against black people in America and white people are the perpetrators. In order for us to atone for our sins, we must tithe to woke United Methodist. This is a common tactic used by social justice warriors. These people think money is the solution to all problems. Kids graduate from high school, can't fucking read. Let's dump more money into the corrupt public school system. High crime in urban areas, let's defund the police and give that money to corrupt social organizations. Black people were enslaved over 200 years ago, and a very, very, very small percentage are the victims of crime carried out by white people. Let's give them money to ease their pain. Money does not solve problems. In a lot of cases, money only makes problems worse. But this entire theory by Paul Krause is complete bullshit, and I'm about to tell you why. If you were a dumbass and you read this article, you would come away from it thinking white people are a threat to the lives of black people. I did the work Paul Krause should have done. This shitfuck is a so-called journalist, yet, like most other journalists in the mainstream media, he refuses to provide facts and stats to back up his claim. The reason that he did this is because the facts sink his narrative to the bottom of the woke sea. According to the most recent statistics from the FBI, 8% of black victims are killed by white people. 8%. Now, I contacted our resident math expert here on the channel, the one, the only, Mina Kimes. She explained to me that 89% of black victims were killed by their own race. I guess the other 1% were killed by Asians or Hispanics or other. Who the hell knows? I didn't want a long, drawn-out conversation with miserable Mina Kimes. Every time I talk to that birthing person, she keeps me on the phone for like 15, 20 minutes telling me about her latest findings in the NFL. Casey, while I have you on the line, check this out. On 3rd and 1, with 4 minutes to go in the first quarter, Matt Stafford is the most efficient quarterback in the league. During the 3rd week of November, inside a dome, with the Rams down 3 points after eating steak and eggs for breakfast. Who fucking cares, Mina? Please return to being useless. The overwhelming majority of crimes committed against black people, I'm talking about all crimes, robbery, assault, breaking and entering, the overwhelming majority are committed by black people against black people. And this is true for all races. The overwhelming majority of crimes committed against white people are by white people. 16% of white victims are killed by a black assailant. Now, that's double the amount of black people killed by white people, but still, that's a relatively low number. What about the police? Well, 52% of victims killed by cops are white victims. 32% were black. So black people are about 2.8 times more likely to be killed by cops than white people. Now, why do you think that is? Why is that the case? I don't know for sure, but I could take a guess. I can't speak for all white people, but most people I grew up with, their parents taught them to respect the police. When you get pulled over, do whatever the fuck they say and move on. If the cop's out of line, if the cop is fucking with you for no reason, we'll figure that out later in court. You don't want to put yourself in a situation that could escalate. So for the time being, do what they say, be respectful, and move on. What is the prevailing notion in the black community when it comes to the police? Well, let me correct that. What is the prevailing notion presented by the mainstream media in the black community when it comes to the police? The cops are racist. They're your enemy. Fear the police. Be afraid of them. Driving while black is a crime in America. If you get pulled over, run for your life. Is it any wonder why young black men run from the cops? They've been taught to be afraid of them. Some were taught by their parents. If I had to guess, many more were taught by the culture and the media. This is not about white people being naive. It's about the media continuing to push a false narrative. White people, white cops, we are not the biggest threat to the black community. The biggest threat to black people lies within their own community. Why does the media continue to push this narrative? Why do politicians push this narrative? To keep us divided. Now more than ever, social justice warriors, they need a divided country. Their policies are an abject failure. Across the board, policies created in the halls of woke you are tanking the country. They use mythical racism as a diversion, attempting to keep your eyes off the real problems. The real problem in America is not mythical racism. The real problem is the woke fungus trying to take over and reshape the country. But let me know what you think. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, publishing some absolute shit. The media continuing to push the false narrative that black people should be afraid of white people. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.